A big story this morning. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is reportedly set to pay a two-day visit to the US from the 12th of February, this to hold talks with US President Donald Trump on a range of issues, including trade and defense. Now, reports suggest that PM Modi will travel to Washington, D.C. after concluding his two-day visit to Paris. It would be the Prime Minister's first bilateral visit to the US after Trump became president for his second term. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali joins us for more on this story. Ghazali, good morning. What's the latest you're picking up? And more importantly, what's likely to be on the agenda?
See, we are being told that Prime Minister will be traveling on 12th of February after the Paris summit, the AI summit in Paris, which happens on 10th and 11th. And Prime Minister will be there from 12th to 14th of Feb. And a lot of issues are going to be discussed. As of now, the details from the External Affairs Ministry or the Prime Minister's office has not yet been released. But what we are being told that the burning issues or the issues which have hit the headlines, considering how Mr. Trump has been passing the executive orders in the first 10 to 20 days since he's been into office, will all be discussed when Prime Minister meets him. The visit also shows the kind of significance Mr. Trump has been giving to the voice of the global South, being the only leader from the South region here that Indian Prime Minister will have been invited for this meeting, shows that all the relevant issues, be it the immigration issue, be it the issue of how Mr. Trump has been passing executive orders to cut down on US aid to different agencies, and all those issues which will impact India directly, because we already had the Quad foreign ministers meet immediately just a day after Mr. Trump was sworn in, shows that he holds or gives a lot of significance to India as a reliable partner. But there will be tough issues which Mr. Modi will be discussing with him when it comes to the issue of tariff, when it comes to the issue of illegal immigration, and beyond that, the usual issue of US-India collaboration in different sectors like trade and investment is there, security cooperation is there, you have space technology is there, and there are different avenues which India will try to expand or deepen its relation with the United States, and Prime Minister will be around in Washington to meet Mr. Trump.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ghazali. We'll definitely keep an eye on that visit. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has agreed to a 30-day pause on his controversial tariff threats against Mexico and Canada. Now, this comes after both countries took decisive steps to address his border security concerns. Now, the tariffs initially set to go into effect Tuesday, that's today, threatened to spark an all-out trade war that would have sent shockwaves through North American economies. Now, this would have caused soaring prices and undermining vital trade relationships. Now, following a tense few days, the pause offers a temporary lifeline. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced plans to, in fact, combat drug trafficking and organized crime, while Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum deployed 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the border. My colleague Maha Siddiqui, in fact, gets you the latest on this story.
The US will not be imposing the 25% tariff against Canadian goods and 10% tariff against Canadian energy exported to US temporarily after two conversations between Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and US President Donald Trump on Monday. After the second conversation in the afternoon, Prime Minister Trudeau announced on social media that the pause is for 30 days. And over this period, the two countries will work together to bolster the border against the movement of fentanyl. Here's what Prime Minister Trudeau has promised: a $1.3 billion package to improve the surveillance of the border, which includes improving the technology as well as increasing the number of choppers and drones for better surveillance of the border. Apart from this, 10,000 personnel will be manning the border to arrest the movement of fentanyl. A fentanyl czar will also be appointed, is something that the Canadian side has announced, a significant announcement which appears that this office is going to be coordinating with the US as well as agencies within Canada to prevent the movement of the opioid. Apart from this, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had, remember, already said that if push comes to shove, Canada will impose reciprocal tariffs against US goods worth $155 billion, 25% tariff, and take this fight forward. For the moment, this fight has been paused, but the provinces in Canada were also ready to take on the fight, with the Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying that his province will snap ties with Elon Musk Starlink, as well as saying that the government will not award any contracts to US agencies. The Quebec Premier had also said that the province of Quebec will also fight this fight with the US, and had said that the alcohol outlet SAQ will not be keeping any of the US products on its shelf henceforth. However, for the moment, it appears that the situation has been curtailed. That is, an all-out trade war between the two neighbors has been arrested for the time being, temporarily for 30 days. How things pan out post that remains to be seen, because US President Donald Trump is not only asking Canada to act against the movement of fentanyl against the border, but also the movement of illegal migrants against the border, apart from the fact that he also wants parity on trade. That is, to reduce the trade deficit with Canada, especially, it appears, in the energy sector, where Canada has an upper hand.
Meanwhile, in response to Donald Trump's threat to impose harsh tariffs, European leaders are drawing the line in sand. French President Emmanuel Macron declared that Europe would not back down if its commercial interests were indeed threatened. Now, he emphasized the need for the EU to act with strength and unity. Meanwhile, Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz echoed this statement, insisting that while the European Union was prepared to retaliate, cooperation remained the goal. However, the stakes are high. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk warned that a trade would be a complete mistake, urging both sides to keep their focus on bigger threats from Russia and China. Now, these statements come right a day before, rather hours before, Trump's planned tariffs were in fact supposed to go live on Tuesday, and now they have been halted, or paused at least, to say, for 1 month. But it's yet still to be known that what awaits us. For more on this, we are joined by David Clay Johnston from New York. He is a professor of public policy at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Really appreciate you joining us, Professor, taking out time this early in the morning. My first question to you, gets straight to the money. With the new 30-day pause, do you really think Trump is just trying to sort of buy time, or is he genuinely looking at a long-term solution?
Well, Donald doesn't think long-term strategically. I've covered the man for 37 years, and he just doesn't think long-term like that. What happened here is he blinked. Both Canada and Mexico made it clear they would take retaliatory actions that would be very damaging to American business. And so Donald, for the moment, has backed off. He's also starting to get kickback from Americans about tariffs, because tariffs raise the prices not just of imported goods, but of any domestic manufactured good that is similar, because manufacturers within the U.S. would raise prices to almost the level of the tariffed good. It's really a scheme to take money out of the pockets of consumers and deepen the pockets of those who own manufacturing companies.
Well, I guess on yesterday's bulletin had something sharp to say. He said this is no way to even run a railroad, let alone international economy. On that note, my second question to you, Professor, how significant is this temporary pause? Especially given the looming uncertainty, even in global markets. We've seen Asian markets tank, the rupee is down. How important is this pause?
Well, markets will bounce around because Donald will bounce around. However, uncertainty is something business owners detest. And I've been a business owner as well as a journalist and a professor. You want certainty. And with Donald Trump, what you have is a lot of lack of certainty. And we're seeing a number of prominent American billionaire investors, Warren Buffett, Ray Dalio, and others, pulling money out of the stock markets and putting it into cash, which tells you they think there's a big chance the economy will suddenly go south or the market will drop sharply, and they want to be able to buy back in at a lower price. And Donald's erratic behavior and uncertain plans contribute to that kind of thinking.
We've been speaking about Mexico and Canada, Professor, but it's not only Mexico and Canada. In fact, the European Union has also vowed a firm response to US tariffs. Now, how likely is it that the European Union or Europe will actually retaliate, and where does that matter in the bigger scheme of things, the larger scheme of things, in the US-EU relations?
Well, if Trump actually imposes additional tariffs, particularly ones that don't have some logical reason to them because of a specific industry matter, you can expect there will be retaliatory tariffs. That's how trade works when you get into a trade war. The European Union is not going to just let Trump have a one-sided attack on them. And keep in mind, Donald Trump has this bizarre idea that the foreign countries pay tariffs. They don't. Consumers in the country that imposes the tariff pay the tariffs. So you should absolutely expect the EU will in some way retaliate. They may do so in a very smart and sophisticated way, which is what I would expect, but they might also just put blanket tariffs on US goods, which will depress US exports.
Taking from that last point you made, Professor, a very valid point, in fact, my last question to you, how might these proposed tariffs in fact impact American businesses in turn?
Well, the number one thing if tariffs are imposed is that American producers of the same or similar products will raise prices. Imagine you owned an Indian car company. You sold cars in the US wholesale for $10,000 each and $1,000 profit. Trump slaps a 60% tariff on Indian cars. Your cars will now cost $16,000. I own an American car company, David's Cars. I'm going to raise my price to $15,000 because your car now costs $16,000. And even if I sell only half as many cars, I'll make 3 times the profit because the tariff will increase my profit per car to $6,000 from $1,000. That's how tariffs work. Tariffs are important for developing countries. The US used them early in its history when it was a developing country. But for a mature economy like the United States, tariffs are simply a scheme to pick the pockets of consumers on behalf of the class that owns manufacturing companies.
Well, thank you so much for that, Professor. Only time will tell how Trump's gamble pays off. It's not looking too good at the moment. Moving on, in yet another dramatic power shift, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in fact, announced on Monday that he had taken control of the US Agency for International Development, commonly known as USAID. Now, Rubio is promising to put an end to what he calls the agency's quote-unquote insubordination to President Trump's agenda. Now, the move comes after Elon Musk vowed to, in fact, dismantle USAID entirely, describing it as a criminal organization and calling for its closure. Now, the agency's website went offline over the weekend, and many of its employees, in fact, were locked out of their offices on Monday as part of Musk's radical push to shrink the government.
I'm the acting director of USAID. I've delegated that authority to someone, but I stay in touch with him. And again, our goal was to go in and align our foreign aid to the national interest.
Meanwhile, we have an important update from the ongoing Ukraine war. A bomb has exploded in the lobby of a luxury apartment block in Moscow, killing a pro-Russian paramilitary leader from eastern Ukraine alongside his bodyguard. Now, Russia's TASS news agency, citing security services, reports that the blast was an attack on Armen Sakskian, the head of the boxing federation in Russia's occupied Donetsk region, and he is also the founder of a battalion fighting against Ukraine. Now, Sakskian, who was wanted, in fact, in Ukraine, has had a long history of aiding pro-Russian forces in the country. No organization has taken responsibility of the assassination till now. Over in West Asia, a car bomb exploded in Mabji, a city in the northern part of Syria, on Monday, the 3rd of February, killing at least 19 people. This marks the second such attack in the city in just 3 days, after Saturday's blast and the deadliest in Syria since Bashar al-Assad's ouster from power in December 2024. The blast reportedly took place about 30 kilometers from Turkey's border, and the victims included 18 women and 1 man. According to local Syrian civil defense, another 15 women were wounded. Some of them are even in critical condition.